welcome. This is the Remix Austin Meetup. We do this once a month, the end of the month-ish. If somehow you got on here without being on Meetup, that's cool, but that's going to be the easiest way to keep up to date with this is Meetup. Just subscribe to that and you'll know when the events come up. We got two awesome speakers tonight. We got Justin, who's going to be talking about Cloudflare workers plus Cloudflare pages plus Remix, which will be Neato Cheeto. And then we also have Patrick, who's online. He'll be talking to us about Sanity and how to build Remix with CMSs. Sanity CMS, which will be also very cool. So without further ado, Justin, you can take it away.
Cool, thanks. Let me close out of my email so I don't get notifications. That'd probably be a good idea. So last time I wasn't able to get it working with, I guess some echo on someone's laptop.
That was me. I'm so sorry about that.
So prepared, Brooks.
Yep.
So yeah, I guess I'll walk over here. So yeah, I'm Justin Reynolds. I run a company called DevDocs with a couple of my buddies. We've been in business since January. We broke off from another company. We do software development and documentation services, and in the future, hopefully some products of our own. So tonight I will talk about Cloudflare with Remix. Basically, my story is that I went to the Remix conference in Salt Lake City recently. Thanks to Brooks. Brooks is a longtime friend of mine now. And because I started to become very fond of Remix in general, I decided to make a little bit of a sub brand off of my main company for doing consulting services called remixdevs.com. And I also decided to go to the conference the day before the conference. So I managed to book everything the day before that morning and fly out that night, and decided to make a Remix website the day I landed of the conference and try to challenge myself. Can I build a whole website and like a landing page with responsive and get it deployed to Cloudflare in less than a day? So it took me about half a day roughly to get it done. So I'm going to show you that, and also I'm just going to talk in general. So I've got some slides prepared to talk about the technologies, walk you through a little story, and then I'll show you some code and the end result and what it looks like, how it all gets deployed. And feel free to stop me at any time if someone sees a question. Just yell it out and ask me whatever you want. Not too formal. First we're going to talk about what is Cloudflare. If you don't know already, Cloudflare basically maintains a bunch of servers across the world, and they call it an edge network, which allows them to basically serve almost all of the internet users in the world in a very, very fast amount of time. So the idea being that when you normally deploy your site, you deploy it to a particular region. Cloudflare has been at this for a while now. I actually don't remember when they were formed, but they've been around for quite some time. They started off in DNS services as kind of their main offering, managing your site through them. And they've graduated into so many products, it's hard to keep track a lot of times. And actually at my previous company, we did their documentation. So we had 20 different documentation sets for 20 different products at the time. And they've only at least probably doubled that since in the last year or two. So they're aggressively growing and creating lots of utilities for your developers to be able to have better sites in all sorts of areas. And one of those things we'll talk about tonight is a new product of theirs in general. So the idea is that by doing this, they can obviously reduce latency. They can provide scale for your website where you don't have to worry about all of these concerns, whereas in a typical environment such as AWS, or before even AWS, if you wanted to run things worldwide, you had to have your actual own contracts with data centers and put servers in there. They did all that hard work for us. And with Cloudflare, they kind of obfuscate a lot of this complexity, and they make it a lot easier to deploy a worldwide application with redundancy and fast service and all sorts of different things that you want out of a production application. And even for a non-production application, the other fun thing is that they do this mostly for free a lot of times. Their free tier is pretty generous. So if you're just looking to tinker around, you can get a lot of stuff done on Cloudflare without too much. So cool side note, this picture is kind of neato. Those are lava lamps, and they have cameras pointed at these lava lamps as a redundancy for their random number generator, so that they can make sure that their random number generator is always operational, because it's very important for them. I actually don't know why. I just thought it was cool that there was a wall full of lava lamps with cameras pointed at it, and they use that as a seed for their random numbers for cryptography. So kind of neat, just fun fact. There are a bunch of, I actually hung out with the CEO one time, and they had a product, and they're really, really down to earth people. Very, very normal, very, very, very cool. So, and they have great product in general. Not that this is a sales pitch. I just like it, unfortunately. So you may have been paying attention recently. I'm gonna share a nice little thing from Reddit that I found rather hilarious. This is a little bit of sarcasm, but yeah, basically June 21st of this year, they had an outage that took out 19 of their data centers. So lots of problems, and apparently there was the data centers that handled most of their traffic. So it took out a lot of internet sites, a lot of things, a lot of services. So yeah, not fun in general, not cool. So there's some downsides, of course. But what about, you know, this kind of stuff happens, right? AWS, if we want to talk about outages, dead Roomba is not fun. It's really very serious stuff when the Roombas go down. Your house gets dirty, it doesn't work right. I actually had my Roomba go out, and I was very, very disappointed. I had to take the whole week off, I'm kidding. But anyways, the point is, this is not new. We were just talking about it before, that, you know, some shit happens, to put it simply. Like, it's not always going to be perfect, but they do try, and you know, when things go down, they usually get back up pretty quickly. They got it up basically within like an hour. They were on it. They were communicating with everybody. They were basically telling us, yeah, let's get it back online. So in general, you can rely on it as the main takeaway, right? So in general, let's get back to talking about the benefits, the good. Cloudflare workers. So this is a relatively new service. They started it a couple of years ago, but it's basically sort of, you know, battle hardened now, however you want to define that, but pretty reliable service. Lots of people have begun using it. It's gotten more and more popular over time as a bit of an alternative to AWS Lambda and other services like that. Essentially what you would call serverless frameworks. So like I just mentioned, I should have hit forward on that, but all the different cloud providers are sort of, they have kind of their own thing like that. And so the idea is basically that you can run this serverless code all over the world, close to your users, getting sub 20 millisecond response times, assuming that your code doesn't have a poor bug and you're not, you know, writing bad code. The promise is that it's pretty good for you. So that's kind of the idea. This is basically how it works. I'm not going to talk about this too much. I will give these slides out after the talk. I'll ask Brooks to distribute those. So if you want to dig into some of this stuff more, all right, I have some links at the end of this for some tutorials, some starter kits, stuff like that. So you can kind of dig into the things that I found useful when I was trying to learn this and take care of it. But needless to say, basically, there's not really a backend that you have to maintain or worry about. There's no service that you run or maintain. You pretty much deploy your code to workers, and it handles the rest for you in terms of all of the complexities of responding to things and uptime and different things like that. So this is one of the main cells of workers, very minimal configuration, no region necessary. The region is Earth by default. So all those little dots are basically where Cloudflare maintains servers. So you can see that unless you're trying to get something maybe in Antarctica or the frozen wastes of Canada, you're probably going to have a pretty good time with the response time, because that's a lot of servers and server farms all over the place. So I'll jump backwards one slide. Minimal configuration is important. A lot of us have gotten spoiled over the time as things have gotten easier in development. There's easier to push, easier to build, easier to deploy. And this is basically what I see as, you know, Cloudflare Workers is one of many competing products that kind of takes it to the next level of saying, you guys get to do even less, and you get to have this fantastic production runtime that lets you do what you want to build your app, which we'll get to in a bit. So now back to the bad, right? So there are some issues in terms of constraints and what you're able to do. Like node versions can sometimes be, you have to be constrained to a specific thing. You have to be constrained to specific CPU usage, to specific memory usage, to specific storage limitations, to specific response times in terms of how quickly you actually respond to a request. So that kind of stuff can be, you know, can be some issues with that. So the free plan, as I mentioned, and the paid plan give you some different stuff, right? The longer they run your code, the more expensive it is for them, which means they need to charge you. So at the same time, I wouldn't necessarily say it's a bad. It depends on how you look at it, right? It can force you to write better code by way of these limitations. So they're not too bad in general. If you write your code roughly okay, you're not doing anything too crazy, it'll fit most of your needs, especially if you're doing, proof of concept app, but even in production. The point is you can pay for more if you want to. You get to that point, it can scale with you, but you have to be concerned about some of that stuff.
Hey, Justin, do you think that might follow the curve of like Lambda that started out really constrained and then started to kind of gradually give you more duration, et cetera?
Yes, yes. In general, like I said, this platform is only maybe 2-3 years old in general for Cloudflare workers in particular. So it definitely is newer for sure. And obviously with some of that trade-off on complexity that it takes to run stuff in Amazon serverless environments, you get less complexity here, but you're gonna have to trade off and have maybe some more constraints. They're not, again, in practice, it's really not a big deal, to be honest with you. And if it became a big deal, like your app really needs to be concerned about that, then good for you, because that means your thing, whatever you made is successful. And at that point, you can worry about it. But the point is they're ready for you to have a more complicated app. But if you're on the free tier and you're just messing around, you just need to be, you need to pay attention to what you're doing and understand what the underlying infrastructure is. Another thing though is this new thing they've come up with called durable objects, which has to do with, okay, cool, we've got this Lambda thing, but what do I do about when I need to store stuff persistently? I need to have a persistence between runs. This is also a newer product they've come out with, they call durable objects. And they want to be able to allow you to offload things in general to be able to store it persistently. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. Moving on to Cloudflare Pages. So Cloudflare Pages is works actually hand in hand with Cloudflare Workers. So we'll talk a little bit about that. So what we refer to as the Jamstack platform, allowing you to deploy usually static sites is what it was originally put out for. So if you had something like a Gatsby site, something like that, you could quickly deploy it and have it running and be able to serve requests utilizing that whole Cloudflare network we talked about. Recently, though, they have expanded this to be more of a full stack serverless platform. By utilizing Cloudflare Workers combined with Cloudflare Pages, you can get a whole app deployed very quickly without having to do a lot. Before, you had to kind of do it on your own. You had to, similar to AWS, you kind of have these building blocks and you kind of have to put it all together. And, I have to have a router and I have to have, DNS configurations, and I have to do all this stuff to get my app going. Now what they have is they basically just say, just push your app, more similar to like a Heroku situation. If you've ever used that, just push your app and you can pretty much have at it. So we'll talk about that a little bit more. So again, if you've used modern platforms at all, which probably most of us have, like it's got a lot of the stuff that we come to expect from a developer experience based off of ease of use, being like, Git integration and being able to automatically build on push and being able to build very quickly and easily without having to set up all this infrastructure and webhooks and all kinds of crazy stuff like that. I forgot what I was going to say here. Okay, so yeah, unlimited seats. Sorry, I have some speaker notes. Yeah, so there's no they're not bounding this based off of like the number of developers you have and all this stuff like that. And like I mentioned, you're getting a lot of that whole network that Cloudflare has been building for, I believe they've been around for at least a decade, if not longer at this point. But they've been building out such a great infrastructure for so long that you get all that benefit of it not being a newer platform overall. Now they're at that point in their company where they're building all these like value add pieces on top of what they've already built. So you don't have to worry so much about it's like, hey, is this startup going to go out of business tomorrow because oh, what a cool platform, and then actually you figure out there's all these bugs, there's all these problems, it doesn't work for this use case, doesn't work for that use case. Cloudflare doesn't have as many of those problems, and so this is one of the products that really helps that, and it also integrates with Remix, which is what we'll talk about in a second. Which brings me to this slide, right? The idea being that Remix, for instance, relies on session data a lot, and you need to be able to store some of that stuff server side. So with the combination of like durable objects, along with Cloudflare workers and Cloudflare pages. It kind of builds out this whole picture that allows you to really deploy a full application that has all the things you would expect without getting into all the gotchas where when Lambda for AWS came out, they were like, it's so great, it's so awesome, it's gonna be serverless, everything's gonna be fantastic. And it was not that fun to develop in, to say the least, at least in my opinion. You can disagree with me, that's okay. But basically, the point is, the point I'm making is that with Remix in particular here, you can basically just get a starter kit from Remix, hit go, hit deploy, and you have all this stuff that you normally would have to worry about, not worried about anymore. And that same problem comes into when you're working with other platforms. You quickly find out that when you start adding in different things, you're like, oh, well, what about this? Oh, what about that? And then you're like, okay, well, I need to like add this over here to make that work. And the story here is a lot better. It's a lot more complete. And Cloudflare keeps trying to take those use cases and say, let's fix that use case. Let's put another bundle together with that, and then add it into the whole package and say, okay, yeah, now we've covered that. Now we've covered that. Now we've covered that. And we've covered it in a scalable way that's ready for production. It's ready for large amounts of data. It's ready for large amounts of traffic. It's got a huge performance in different regions. You get all of that, right? And here's a quote from Michael Jackson, real name, CEO of Remix. Everyone always makes that joke, but I have to because it is a good one. But nonetheless, basically, Cloudflare Workers uses native web fetch API rather than you having to do a lot of things inside of there. And that is actually something that Remix was inspired by in general. And so Cloudflare and Remix kind of work really, really well together. And Remix actually doesn't require, if you don't know this already, Remix doesn't require a native kind of behavior or like a native Node.js environment to be able to operate. Because of the way Remix is architected, you can actually target Remix as essentially a shim layer between your backend, and it kind of run targeting different areas, right? So they're looking to expand the usefulness over time because they're relying on standards rather than saying it has to be this Node.js HTTP library. They're saying, no, it's the web fetch library, which should be able to be implemented in any kind of runtime. That's kind of why Cloudflare Workers is such a great fit. And Remix already has an official integration with Cloudflare Workers. They have official integrations with other platforms as well. So by all means, check all of those out.
Vamos,
But the point,
vamos. Cadê a chave do carro?
Que hora que vem?
Hey, there we go. I got it muted.
All right, cool.
I had that.
So yeah, basically, Remix is well paired to be very efficient in running in this environment without having to have extra things to kind of massage it in and make it work, or extra overhead that you would have to set up with a normal Node.js application. Remix gains some performance benefits by not having to do that because of the way that the framework is architected. So you kind of stay within your lane in terms of doing things the Remix way. You can get a lot of benefits out of that, out of the box, without you really having to think about it or worry about it too much. So just again, to talk about performance differences, here's a thing called the Remix port app. We're basically running using the Vercels version, which is created by the Next.js team, running their kind of version, which does not run in a globally distributed way, the way that Cloudflare does. But they have serverless, right? But the serverless runs in a single region usually, and I think they're working on a fix for that. So correct me, anyone can speak up and correct me if this is like, you know, like, hey, oh no, it's going to be that way someday, right? But yeah, Cloudflare has been doing this for a long time, and this is the point. So they already have a head start against a lot of people. So, but you can kind of see the difference in speed there when maybe you can't see it. So look at the slides afterwards. The point is, it's a lot faster on Cloudflare and a lot better in different regions.
Is that like 3x the TTFV basically?
I actually don't remember right now, and I can't see that properly. Actually, like my
It
own.
looks like quite a bit before the waterfall even starts.
You get a ruler out.
Yeah, it's definitely better. Let's put it that way. That's the main
Yeah.
point. And you can double check the screenshots afterwards when we send out the slides. It's hard for me to actually see these slides and keep talking. It's because I can't see it on my laptop. All I see is my speaker notes, so it's kind of fun. So the other thing, and this is back to what I said, the point here is that the other thing is that even if they do run in the same region and they are actually running in the same spot, it still shows that Remix is faster on Cloudflare than it is running elsewhere because of the fact that it's edge native, meaning that it doesn't need that Node.js runtime to be able to actually perform. So that actually increases the speed even more because of the way the remix is architected on the server side. So that's one of the big benefits of this approach overall, is that if you just get completely away from the whole, worrying about Node.js, this is something that at the Remix conference, Ryan Dahl talked about when he's talking about Deno and the Deno deploy platform, is moving to a world that we move beyond the framework of the actual, the runtime, not the framework, moving beyond the runtime and worrying about the complexities of running a runtime process such as Node.js or a virtual machine. If you're coming into other languages, stuff like that, you're getting away from that and you're targeting an API that actually can be ported across different cloud providers, across different types of apps. You can use different sorts of backends and front ends and all kinds of different things like that a lot easier. So this is basically, again, just showing that even if you're in the same region, there's still a benefit in speed that the Cloudflare approach has over other approaches when using Remix in particular. I haven't gone out and done all the research about other frameworks, but because Remix is edge native, meaning they directly integrate with workers as opposed to having to run Node.js on top of workers is the main thing. So I have a couple of different things in here that you can click into later. We'll send those out later, but basically just some references and different things for you to look at, some starter kits and some tutorials and some information. There's a lot of stuff out there, but those are the ones that I was kind of happy with. So I put them on the slides and you guys can do that. Oh my God, this is difficult. It's like laggy trying to get to it. So here's one of my virtual machines. Let me pull open some code now, and I'll stop for a second if anyone has questions while I'm getting this up. Please ask away. I cannot see you over there.
Do you want to start mirroring at this point? I don't know if you still have a speaker.
Oh, I don't have speaker notes. I could mirror it. I'm afraid to.
Up to you. Yeah.
I probably should mirror it.
It might just be easier.
All right, let me see if I can mirror. Let's see if that works real quick. But yeah, ask away if you guys have questions. If not, then watch me fiddle with this. Still working? Yes. Beautiful.
Yeah, you're good.
That'll be a lot easier to look at, but now this is happening.
I just do that.
There we go. Oh, it all works. Fantastic.
So you teased a little bit about it, not just for static sites anymore. You can run more dynamic things at the edge. Maybe I would assume things like auth and some personalization and not and so.
Pretty much whatever, right? It's a runtime. It's very similar to Lambda, so you can run kind of whatever you want.
Okay.
But we'll talk about web apps here because this is a Remix meetup. So if we didn't show some Remix, that would be a bad idea. I spent a lot of time talking about Cloudflare. So what I'm running here is, let me just see if I can scroll up here a little bit. So I'm running, and this is remixdevs.com, the code. I started from a starter kit for Cloudflare, and then I basically added a bunch of stuff in there for what I wanted and built this site. This is the half-a-day project I did. So in here, they have this command line tool called Wrangler. And let me show you the Wrangler config. So this is all in the Cloudflare documentation. And basically, you kind of set up some metadata about what you're doing, what your project is, and this affects what happens when you deploy it to Cloudflare. And then they have a command line tool of the same name that actually allows you to kind of interact with their services and push stuff in a very easy way. So we've got some package JSON magic scripts going on here. They're not too magic. And I can send this code out as well. It's not like top secret or anything. Okay, sorry about that. Let's get back up here. We'll take a look at a couple of packages that are in here. Basically, like there's some Cloudflare packages. The Remix, as I mentioned, has some actual right here. They have an official integration with Cloudflare workers. That's where the magic is happening, which we won't go into too many details if you want to do that as homework afterwards. But basically, that's where the integration is really reliant, is on that integration that they officially maintain. And then, of course, we have all some standard packages, linting, some testing, and as well as a dev server that we can run. Basically, we've got 3 different things that are kind of running. We got Tailwind, we have the Remix dev server, and then we have Miniflare. So Miniflare is a replicated kind of like it mimics Cloudflare, but offline on your local machine. So they've thought about kind of everything about the worker, the dev experience to try to make that as simple as possible. So that's what's happening when I'm running here, is I've got all those things running in the console. Beyond that, again, I know we got 7 minutes or so. So I won't dig too far into everything, but basically there's some configurations in here which have to do with whether you're serving like assets or you're serving pages. So if I'm serving like images and other things like that versus pages, And it basically talks about, you can read, this is from the documentation for Cloudflare, where you can kind of go a little step further if you want to configure stuff and do things a little bit differently in here. And then outside of that, basically Remix handles most of it for you. So at that point, you're just doing some plain old Remix, which I know not everybody is familiar with Remix. So maybe it might be useful to talk about that a little bit. Let's see, I'll show the page first, and then depending on how much time I have, we'll talk about it a little bit. So this is the site that I made, basically. I have a designer that works for me who threw this together for me real fast. And it's basically, we didn't have a lot of time, so it was just like a landing page, and you click there to contact us, like, hey, let's go, let's do Remix projects, because I actually really do love Remix a lot. So most of the fuss of this was actually just getting it to be right on different screen sizes, and the tailwind related to that. Not that Tailwind's bad or anything, I like Tailwind quite a bit, but that was actually most of the work, because the rest of this really, yeah, it's always CSS. The rest of this was pretty straightforward overall. Like it's pretty much not too difficult. So let me jump, try to think if I should show you guys more Remix or not, because I think the next talk is going to show more Remix, right? I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Patrick, do you want to weigh in?
Maybe I won't talk about too much Remix right now. Just talk about the Cloudflare piece a little more.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
I think focus on Cloudflare. I like that idea.
Yeah. So
I want it.
yeah. So basically over here in the Cloudflare side, okay, that's not, get out of here. That is not cool. I had that working a second ago. Get out of here. All right, that's good. I have an email. I'll set that down for a second while I wait for the email. I have some GitHub actions over here, and I could show that. Let me pull open the deployment YAML. So it's really not that complicated. I mean, if you ever use GitHub actions, it's pretty much just check out the repo, download some dependencies, and do a Wrangler publish, which is pretty simple overall, with some Cloudflare secret tokens that we get from the website. All in all, this part was literally the fastest thing that it took me on this website. It took me about, I would say, 20 minutes total to get it to deploy for the first time I'd ever done it this way. So it was not really that difficult. And then that kind of like comes in here and shows, some different things that run, and you can read all these different logs. We can dig into that just a little bit, but basically this publish step is more the important one, where you can see a little bit of like what Cloudflare is doing. You can't really see that well though. Zoom in. But basically the Cloudflare is doing a lot of things with that TOML file and the different way Remix is configured and all that good stuff. And then it's basically going through, building things, prepping it, getting it ready, and then essentially sending it over to Cloudflare pages and Cloudflare workers. And if I can get this ridiculous, there it is, Cloudflare login token. I wanted to show you guys the UI because that was one of the cool parts. I don't know why. Don't steal my secret code. Please don't hack me.
This is fast. 30 seconds. Like,
yeah. Well, there you go.
just gotta cut out that part of the video.
All right. Where is it? Oh, no, wrong one. Sorry. That's a different. You can see I like Cloudflare. I have a lot of sites on here. So maybe this number is going to go up today since I'm talking about that. But so we come in here.
Sorry, I forgot to send it.
Sorry. So we come under, where is it? Manage workers. So this is the main kind of worker that runs and serves the website. And you can see we have this workers.dev kind of route that they've created. This part of it is the workers part. There's another part for pages, which I don't even have time to dig into too much. But basically you have these domains that are available that you can visit, and you can kind of get to the website and see it without having to set all that up. And then you can also see, how much money you're spending, how many requests you're getting, all that different stuff like that, how much your durable objects usage is. The site doesn't have any durable object usage, unfortunately. You can see logs, you can see different deployments, you can see different settings, and really the click through for Cloudflare onboarding is pretty fast. You just go click, 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 and you're pretty much ready to go after you hit deploy. So I would just recommend starting with a starter kit because they're pretty bare bones, and then kind of going from there to see it. Sorry, I didn't spend as much time on like live coding stuff. I didn't think I was going to have time, so I did prepare a ton for the live coding. I tried to just jump through it quickly. But with my 2 minutes remaining, I will talk about just how this site is laid out. Since it's a very simple site, I can probably spend 2 minutes talking about this. So one of the biggest things for Remix is the nested routing. And that's one of the things that is kind of the most important, along with these error boundaries that are also important, which I actually, during development, that was really important for me. Actually, I was making some mistakes when I was doing stuff early on. So I found that pretty useful. And then let me find the routes here. 1 second. I think I'm right here. It's this layout here. I'm running out of time, guys. I think I'm gonna stop here. I didn't wrap it up as smoothly as I wanted to, but the point is, it was very quick and easy to get this out the door. So we talked mostly just about the benefits of Cloudflare more than anything. I would recommend the starter kits that I mentioned because it makes it quick to get it done. And then you can look at this code, particularly these 2 files that talk about how they handle the fetch requests and things like that, and it kind of integrates. This is if you want to do some extra fancy stuff on top of what Remix does out of the box, but it makes it really easy to kind of understand under the hood, how does it work, what's happening, and more of those low-level details. So yeah, I'll stop there.
The live URL for?
Is that
What's the live URL for the site?
remixdevs.com?
I'm just refreshing to make sure I drive your costs.
Yeah, I'm gonna trying to do that.
Use up all my free things. Oh, sorry, one last thing I wanted to mention. I wasn't able to figure this out, but there's no live reload when I'm doing remix version of this for the React, which is kind of a bummer. You actually have to refresh the browser every time you make a change. And I think that's because of the way that Cloudflare Workers is supposed to be like an on-demand thing. It's not like a live server. So that is one downside of this approach that I found. I think that there's a way to fix it, but I have not figured it out yet.
Could you just dev with Remix's dev server and then switch over on deploy? Or would you?
Potentially, I would imagine you could, but I'm not sure. Like, I just haven't spent enough time to figure it out. But that was a big downside. Like when you hit save, nothing happens, and you have to like redo it. So that's kind of a pain.
It is nice. It's really fast.
Yeah, it's nice. It's really fast. So
Yeah.
Remix by default is really, really fast about that. It like doesn't require a reload. So I'm not quite sure how to solve that yet. I'm sure there's a solution, but that is one downside.
Yeah, I'm sure you can run, because I know they have like remix :dev.
Yeah.
Just like, you can maybe just run that, but then like you said, you're kind
But
of missing out.
still,
on
I
it
am
all.
running that, and it still doesn't work right. And I
Like
just-
without mini, what was it called? The like mini Cloudflare.
So it's actually running both of those.
Yeah, I'm saying like if you ran it without that one. I would
Without that
compare,
one,
but
yeah.
then you're like missing, I mean, that's the whole point.
Yeah,
is
then
that
you're
you
missing
want-
like,
You
yeah.
want your production environment to be as close as possible.
Exactly.
to- Yeah. Okay.
So
Dang.
small downside, but you know, what
Call
can you do?
Michael Jackson up.
Yeah, call him up and
Yeah.
yell at him, tell him what's going on, man.
Fix it.
So yeah, that's it.
Oh, gosh. Sweet. Does anybody have any questions online or in person? Also, I don't know why the screen is going green, so.
No, that's me.
It's you.
This
Kid.
happened last time.
Woo!
My
That's
night
all right.
light is
You made
on.
me worried.
No, that's all me. There you go.
It's time for that.
At this time, I need to just do it on purpose because like, you know, everybody always like, what's going on?
Exactly.
It's a trick, it's your eyes.
So Miniflare is the CLI tool that you're able to use to develop locally, but develop against like a Cloudflare server.
Miniflare is the local server. Wrangler is the CLI tool. Yeah, Miniflare replicates the Cloudflare runtime locally.
Nice.
Yeah, so you can dig in more to all the other features that they have, things that you want to integrate and create your ideal backend, whatever you want it to look like. But the point being that with Remix plus Cloudflare, you just get a little bit better performance and that
Yeah.
worldwide performance. And that's the main benefit that I've always seen with it, is having that extra performance that you get out of it. There we go. I'll bring that up. Starter kits are really good in general. I would highly recommend you use those. If you want to get started with it, that'd be my recommendation. Because setting it all up, you can also do it with the Create Remix app or whatever. They have a Cloudflare option in their Create Remix app. So it's either way you do it, it's not too hard to get rolling with it. You could have something probably deployed, and like I said, you just want something simple deployed, probably do it in less than an hour, maybe 30 minutes, depending on how fast you are.
It looks like they have a live reload flag.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on.
There is an issue.
Everybody's trying to solve it for me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, there is. I don't know. Who knows?
Somebody needs to fix it.
Yeah.
Somebody needs to fix it. Yeah. So, all right, cool.
Thanks, Justin.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Thanks, man.
Patrick, whenever you're ready, I'm gonna stop sharing on here. And then whenever you're ready, you can take it away.
Okay, awesome. Can everybody hear me?
And
Let's
yes,
see. All right, let me share my screen. Okay, awesome. Can everybody see my screen? Can everybody hear me okay?
yeah, you're good.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, this is actually my first talk at a tech meetup, so we'll see how it goes. But I'm like Justin, I want it to be really informal and really informative. So if you have any questions at any time, feel free to stop me. I want you guys to learn as much about Sanity as you can. So real quick, I'm just going to kind of go over what Sanity is and kind of why I'm giving this talk. For a while, it started during COVID, during the pandemic, when everyone was kind of locked down, and we had a lot of extra time to be in our homes since we couldn't go out and do things in public. I started getting more into freelancing and consulting, and that was kind of around the time when like the term headless CMS was really popular, and there was emergence of a ton of different ones: Sanity, Prismic, Strapi, all of these different options. And so I did a lot of research and found Sanity, and I've just been blown away by how powerful it is, how flexible it is, how customizable it is. It's a great team. They're constantly releasing new features, constantly updating it to be as useful of a tool as possible. In fact, they're about to release a new version. Basically, everything I'm about to show you, they're about to release a new version that's like better in every way. And I almost used the beta, but I decided not to. So if anyone wanted to reproduce it now with the older version, they could. But it's a super great tool. And I wanted to talk about it because it's the easiest term to describe it as a headless CMS, but it's really more of like a complete data solution. So for those of you that have a lot of experience with AWS, I definitely do. So I compare a lot of things to AWS, and Sanity kind of like, it's like a hybrid between like S3, because it allows you to do file storage, images, video, files. It also does, it's kind of like AppSync and DynamoDB and S3 kind of all rolled into one, because you can use it as like a real-time database. You can use it for file storage. You can use it, you can do a lot more beyond just a traditional kind of CMS experience where you allow a content creator who's non-technical to create blog posts. You can definitely do that, but there's so much more to Sanity than that. And so that's kind of why I wanted to do this talk and kind of show you all what Sanity can do and just how easy and customizable Sanity is. So I'm going to I already kind of built a UI here. Let me, is the text okay? Should I zoom in a little bit more?
Maybe it's
just a
great,
bit.
thank you. Oh, there you go. Yeah, it's perfect.
Okay, so what I have here is I just kind of have like a basic, I just set up a basic remix app. I built a little bit of UI using Tailwind and Tailwind UI. So that's all I really have at this point is just Remix and Tailwind, just because I wanted to have something a little bit nicer to show than just text on a screen. And so what I'm going to do is kind of like starting from scratch, like just create a new account in Sanity, create a new database, create schemas for my data, and then pull all of that into Remix. It's super, super awesome. I've been using Sanity as like my go-to data solution for personal projects, and then also at work as well for some projects. And so I kind of want to show you just how easy it is to, once you already kind of have your Remix app, how easily you can spin up a database in Sanity and then use that to pull in data into your Remix app. So we're going to need to go over to Sanity. This is their current homepage. The kind of little walkthrough, it's I'll kind of show you all of this in my demo. So I'm just going to kind of skip this from now. So the first thing you do is create an account. It takes a few seconds. All right, and then we'll also need to install the Sanity CLI. I'm going to go ahead and install that globally. Oops, forgot. oh, sorry, Sanity /CLI. So while that's installing, okay, awesome. Okay, awesome. And then it kind of has a little tutorial here. I'm not gonna go through this walkthrough, but I will need to get into my dashboard in order to authenticate using the CLI. So let's see. Okay, and it kind of has all these instructions here and whatnot. Cool. So what I'm going to do then is I'm going to run, now that I have the Sanity CLI globally, I'm going to run Sanity init to initialize a new Sanity project in this folder. I'm going to have to authenticate with the account I just created. Pretty cool. And then when you create an account for the first time, it creates like an empty project for you. So I'm going to go ahead and use that. By default, calls your default data set production. Let me just say, I'm going to create a folder called Studio, and I'm going to create a clean project. They have kind of like some starter projects to give you an idea of what you can do with Sanity, but I'm just going to start from scratch. So it added this folder here. This is kind of all of the Sanity specific stuff. Then I'll kind of, once this is done installing, I will go ahead and run that so you can see what the Sanity Studio looks like. While it's installing all these dependencies, does anyone online or in person have experience with Sanity or other headless CMSs?
I have experience with Prismic, which is, I think, kind of similar to Sanity. But I've been interested in trying out Sanity.
Does headless
Okay.
WordPress count?
WordPress. Contentful.
Yeah,
Directus.
Yeah, we use
Contentful
Contentful.
at work.
Not me.
Okay, awesome. So now it's, I have used a couple of other ones like Prismic, haven't used Contentful. So I'm not too sure how they compare, but I guess you'll see for yourself as we go through this demo, how it kind of compares to other CMSs you're used to. So you actually use the Sanity CLI to run it locally. So I'm going to run Sanity start. It's going to go ahead and run the studio locally. You have to authenticate. Awesome. And so what's awesome about Sanity is it kind of comes with a like an open source dashboard UI that you can use to allow like non-technical content creators to add and modify content. Right now, we're not seeing anything because we haven't defined schemas for any data types. So we just kind of see this blank page. But as we go through the demo, you'll see it kind of fill out here. And so now we're kind of ready to get the demo started. Let me quickly show you what we'll be building. So I'm going to run the Remix app, and it's going to be like a mock realty website. So it's just a super basic, but the whole point is we're going to make a little Remix realty website where we'll be able to browse homes that are for sale in different parts of Texas. So as we go throughout the demo, we'll be building out schemas for the homes, adding the data in Sanity, and then pulling that and showing it here in our app here.
All the homes in Texas got bought. It's very sad.
So the first thing we need to do in Sanity is define schemas for our document types. I'm going to call this a home. The current version of Sanity, when you bootstrap a project, it'll do it all in JavaScript by default, but the new version that's going to come out probably in the next month kind of has more of like a guided CLI experience where it'll kind of ask you if you want TypeScript or JavaScript. It's similar to the Remix CLI, but it's a little bit more complicated to get TypeScript working in the current version. So I'm just going to use JavaScript for now. But we're going to create a JavaScript object which defines our schema. So I'm going to give it a name, a title, a schema type, and then I'll kind of explain what these do. So the name is kind of like the API handle, like when we query it, query our data from Sanity, this is going to be like what the name we're querying. And then this title is going to be displayed in the UI for content creators or anyone that logs in to modify it. And then the type is the type of schema. So Sanity calls, I guess, like, so if you want to like map this to a relational database, a document would be like a row in a table, essentially. So I'm defining a table like a home table, and then each individual row is called a document. So this is the schema for that type of document. And then within that, we can kind of define the columns, so to speak, of this table. And so we'll say, let's say we have, each home will have a price, and we'll give it the same title, and then it will be a number. Sanity has a bunch of different schema types. They roughly map to JavaScript primitives. So there's a Boolean type, there's a number type, there's a string type, and then there's some kind of helper types that have like built-in validation, like URLs, that have like a slug type for generating slugs from different from other fields in your data. So we're going to start very basic for now, and then we still won't see anything because we haven't actually told Sanity about this schema. So we'll go in here, we'll import our home schema. And you can see that I added a lot of really helpful comments. So we add that there, and now we should see with the hot reloading. Now we have, now we see homes here, and now we can create different homes. So this is a number input. So if I'm trying to type in letters, it won't let me. I can only type in numbers. And then kind of how Sanity works, which is, I think it's a great tool for traditional CMS use cases, but also for like prototyping and MVPs. And so I use it for a lot of personal projects. If I just want to whip something up really quickly and I don't want to have to like set up a Postgres database or set up like a GraphQL server, if I just want something done for me initially, I'll reach for Sanity. And so right now, even though I haven't hit published, this document lives as a draft. And it's kind of like Google Docs, wherein if you have a bunch of people signing into the same dashboard, they'll kind of have data about like who created a document, when was it last edited, what changes were made for each edit. So it's really cool in that way because you can really do a lot with it, and it's great in teams where multiple people need access to the same data. But I'm going to go ahead and hit publish this. So now it's it's live. It can be accessed by users. We can't do much with this though. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of fill it out a little bit more. So let's see. We're going to need, probably going to need an address for the homes. And this is not going to be a number. This is going to be a string. The city the home is in. String is, you know, kind of self-explanatory. It's going to give me like a string input here. Nothing too crazy. What's interesting though, I'm going to kind of show, so I'm going to do very contrived basic examples, but kind of show different things Sanity can do. So for example, Sanity will let me publish this, but this isn't a real city name. This is kind of garbage, and we won't be able to. In our example, we're only looking at cities in Texas and only a select few cities in Texas. So what we can do to kind of make this more of a drop-down component is we can pass an options parameter, and we can say, let's say, title, and then we can do something like this. And then if we go over to our studio, now we can only choose valid options. So we're not going to have, if we have a content creator that isn't familiar with the specifics of how we're supposed to query it or the valid inputs, now we don't have to worry about that because you're forced to choose a valid input. So Good to go ahead and build this out a little bit more. Let's say we need a zip code. Zip.
Would there be a dynamic way to look up those lists of potential values?
Yes, there is actually. So you could, I believe, I remember I actually asked this question before. They have a really good developer community. They have a Slack channel that anyone can join. And I believe you can pass an asynchronous function. I don't know if it's into the list. I think it might be to the list. I'm not too sure, but I know basically what the answer was is you could pass an asynchronous function somewhere in the schema that would fetch a list of predefined values, and then that would be loaded into the studio. Is that what your question? Does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah, that's pretty slick.
Yeah, I have done that once, and it was kind of confusing, and they walked me through it, and I was like, wow, this is awesome. But I forgot exactly how you do it, but you can pass asynchronous functions to some of these parameters to load things asynchronously.
Cool, thanks.
So let's see, we have a zip code. This is a string, not a number. Some zip codes in other countries have letters, and so typically you represent this as a string. But I don't trust my content creators to always remember the exact zip code format. So you can actually pass validation functions. You can say rule.required. And if they try to leave off the zip code, it'll throw an error. You can also pass regex. You can also pass in custom validation functions. And so we could apply a regex here that would validate that if it's a US zip code, that it always has 5 numbers, for example. You could also have, there's a lot of built-in validation. So for example, a price is a number. So we might want to have, we probably want this to be required, and we probably also want to have a minimum value of $1, just as very basic validation. There's a lot of really cool things you can do here. Strings, I don't think it makes sense to have them in here. We'll just make that required. So yeah, I think this is the basics. Let me see. So let me just. So Sanity, they created their own querying language for their data called Grok. But it has a GraphQL-like syntax. So they have this query tool where you can kind of query your data and see how it looks. So this is basically saying, hey, I'm going to query against all of my data, my entire data set. And then this is called a filter expression. So we created a schema called home. And so we're going to filter our data set, and we only want to retrieve the documents that have this home schema. And so you can kind of see here, we got back our data. We have all of the fields that we created, and then you can see that Sanity has their own fields that they kind of populate whenever you create a document. Kind of has a unique ID, created that, updated that, and then you have your schema type right here, which has a key of underscore type. So super cool. And then this revision thing is used for keeping track of who's edited what and what changes they've made. So yeah, so let's go ahead. We have some data, so let's go ahead and pull it into our remix project. So currently we don't have any homes in Austin. So let's see if we can change that. So we're going to go ahead and switch over to, okay, so this is the terminal for our remix project. So I'm going to install there's a couple different clients for querying Sanity. I'm going to install one called Pico Sanity. It's a little bit smaller than the official Sanity client library, and it's going to serve us well for this purpose. So we installed it. Let's go ahead and make a new folder called services. And then I will create a new file called sanity.ts. Then let's import our client library. And then we're going to have to define a config object. Let me see here. We do export const. So we're going to want to go to, when Sanity bootstrapped our project, they added this sanity.json file, which kind of has a lot of data specific to our project. And in order to initialize the client to point it to our database correctly, we're going to have to copy the project ID in the data set. So let's add that into our config. And then we're also going to forget what the, I think it's API version. Let me see. Sorry, I forget all the required fields for the config. Okay, here we go. So we need the project ID data set, which we have. The project ID is going to be unique. So we're going to need to make sure we pass in our project ID. The API version, they use a UTC date string, and then use CDN. Sanity by default. Oh, so earlier I mentioned it's kind of like AWS S3 and DynamoDB and AppSync. It's kind of like has a lot of things built in. It also has its own CDN, and so when you query your data from Sanity, by default it'll use its CDN and it'll kind of cache your data. And you can kind of configure how long you want it to cache, but I'm just gonna set this to false so that we always get the latest data and we don't have to worry about getting stale data when we fetch using our Sanity client. Okay, so this should be enough to start fetching our data into our application. So let's go to the route where we're displaying that information. Let's see here. Inside of our loader function, let's do homes equals await. Okay, so we're gonna have to pass this client library. It takes a string with a grok query. So remember I told you it's this kind of GraphQL-like syntax. So we're gonna pass that in. And then kind of like GraphQL, we can pull out all of the data that exists on that document, or we can specify what values we need. So if we only want the price for each, I guess, if we want to query all the documents for a given table or schema, and we only need the price if we only need to display the price on this page, then we can tell it, hey, only give us the price. So I can kind of show you that. See that here, and then okay, and then I'll just console log it so you can kind of see what it looks like. And this won't actually work. Yeah, so this won't actually work. This is actually intended. What I forgot to do is when you set up a Sanity project for the first time, let me go here. So this is what's called the studio. But there's also the dashboard, which kind of lets you manage a lot of like high level settings about the project. And they have a CORS whitelist. And by default, it only whitelists the URL that it uses locally. And since our Remix dev server is on a different port, we're gonna have to whitelist that port as well. Okay, awesome. And then let's see here. Need to start my dev server again. Okay, now let's see what we get in the console. Okay, let me see. Seems like, oh, here we go. Awesome. So we were able to retrieve our data. So as you see here, even though we specified a zip code in a city, because we only asked for the price and the address in our Grok query, that's all it returned to us. And so to get our UI to work here, I'm just going to ask for everything we have. And then go through here.
To pull it out of the object.
What was that?
When you're passing in the JSON, you're putting it in homes in an object. So it's not an array. It's
Oh, I got you.
nested. Yeah, there you go.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay. So we're having some issues, and that's because okay, this is going to tie into images. So I guess because we're using images for each home in my UI, I'm going to have to upload some images here, and I'll kind of talk about how Sanity handles images. So what I did is I built out the full project, and then I try to strip away everything that wasn't Sanity related. But I left some code for handling images. So I guess we'll add that now so that we can get this page working correctly. So I'm going to add a new field in my home schema called media. And this is going to be where I will store either any images or any videos uploaded for that property. So this is going to be an array type because we want the user to be able to upload multiple images or multiple video files if necessary. So we'll say it's going to be a type of array. And when you use a type of array, you have to specify what schema type what schema type is going to be used for the individual elements of the array. So we're going to say it's an array of image. So we're going to have an array of images. You'll see now we can go ahead and upload images. So what I'm going to do to kind of get more realistic data is I'm going to pull from real listings in Trulia just to kind of have more realistic looking data. So it's a little bit more realistic. Okay, so here we have this listing. So let me go ahead and, sorry, I'm gonna go ahead and save a couple images here. Let's see. So I'm just gonna save these images pretty quickly. I want different images of our house. We won't do video for the sake of this demo, but it's pretty similar. You would just, instead of type image, there's not a video schema type, but there's a file schema type. And you could use that schema type to upload a video and then get the URL for that video.
Are you able to use like union types?
Yes, so we could actually do, so right now we have an array of just images, but we could also have an array of images or files.
Oh, that's pretty slick.
Yeah, so it's super customizable. And then for now, let's do image, but we can actually kind of like extend these types. So what we can do if we want to enforce that every image has a like an alt text, we can say, I believe it's fields. We just say name, alt, title, alt text. This is a string, and to prevent content creators or content yeah, our content creators from forgetting it, we're going to make it required. So if we save this, whenever we upload an image, it'll actually throw an error because we didn't, oh, well, I guess it didn't upload fully. So let me hit open, uploading. And then once it's uploaded, let's see here. Okay, this UI is kind of weird, but you have to hit this pencil and then it'll show you the alt text, that field that we entered there.
Modals
It's
on
required. Sorry, what was that?
Oh, modals on modals. It's great.
Yeah.
Oh,
I thought this
yeah.
was called, I thought this was called Sanity. What's going on?
What is interesting though is all of this is open source. The studio, this part that you see in front of you, and so you can create custom input components. So if you wanted to, if those modals bothered you enough that you wanted to spend some time creating a custom image upload component, you could definitely do that. And there's community, they're called plugins, but people in the community have made their own custom components that they upload, and anyone in the community can use those in their projects as well. So here we go. I'm going to upload 4 images and you'll see why later. I have part of my UI, I kind of show a collage of the different images, and I have 4 placeholders. So we'll say, cool, I have a kitchen, and then last image. Here we go. Okay, awesome. So we're going to publish that, and then what's interesting though, okay, so images and files are probably the weirdest thing about Sanity if you're not used to it. So you're not, what it does is it's going to upload these images. It's going to upload any type of file, images, videos. It's going to upload, and it's going to generate a URL that you can use to load that file from the Sanity CDN. But in the database itself, it stores it as this, it's called an asset, what they call an asset. So you can see here is we don't actually have that URL. Sanity kind of does, and we'll talk about what to do and how to actually get the URL in your front end. But it's important to know that it stores these as what they call assets, and it's not just the direct URL. You kind of have to, when you query it, you kind of have to tell it when you're querying it, hey, I want to retrieve the URL, not the actual asset, not this data structure that you see here. Because by default, it will return this to you, which is kind of weird for people that are expecting a URL. So what we'll do is, in order to turn this into a URL, Sanity provides us with a library called, I believe it's at sanity/image URL. And what we can do here is we will import how am I doing on time? Do I have like 5 more minutes or?
Yeah, yeah, you got a few more minutes.
Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to kind of create this image builder, create a Sanity image builder, but we have to pass it our config so that it knows which data set and project ID. And so what this will do is it will kind of fetch that asset that we saw in the query tool, and it'll turn that into a URL, but it'll allow us to like dynamically, like whenever we fetch the image, it'll allow us to crop it to a certain size or to compress the image so that it's smaller when it's loaded into the browser. So let me just create a helper function. Okay. Is this TypeScript complaining? Yeah. I think it's Sanity image source. There we go. So
in, sorry.
So you can see here, sorry, the dev server opened new tab. So what you can see here, what we're doing is this is going to provide us with that weird asset data structure. And then our helper function is going to use that library we just installed to turn that into a URL. But it'll allow us to kind of use these kind of like utility functions. So we can specify the height so that it sends us a smaller version of that image. We can specify a crop if we know that we're going to need to crop the image for the component that it's being rendered in. So there's a lot of really cool things you can do. It's kind of like Cloudinary or some of those other like image processing services. Sanity, this is basically Sanity's version of that that you can use out of the box. So now if we go here, interesting, let me see what's going on here. Oh, maybe we just had to refresh it. Okay, awesome. So there we go. So now, so now we're able to load images in Sanity. We have our.
That's the monthly rent.
Yeah. I was a little bit. I was very ambitious when I was planning this talk. So I was going to kind of walk through. You kind of have the basics, the gist of what Sanity can do. There's also a page for the individual home where I basically kind of showed that you could do rich text. So I guess I could show that real quick without going through everything, but some of the other really cool schema types that Sanity offers, let's say we wanted to have a description of the home. We wanted the realtor to be able to, kind of write a little bit about the home, what's nearby, that kind of thing. Get out a description. This is kind of weird. It's actually an array of type block. So Sanity invented their own kind of like protocol for rich text called portable text. And it's actually an array of content. So you can add your rich text here. You can add a heading. Sometimes it's, sometimes it's a little bit finicky. Maybe I have to expand the editor. Did I save it correctly? Here, let me refresh it. Let me refresh the studio. Being a little weird here. Okay, let's see. Okay, so we could do rich text. We could say, we could add, it's kind of like Google Docs. You can add bullets, you can add strike throughs, you can add code snippets. And then when you, Sanity also provides a library for then converting this portable text into React. And so you would install a library called Portable Text React, and then you would query it normally. So in our case, we named it description, and then you would pass that value into that portable text component that Sanity provides, and then that'll render the correct HTML. So it'll have the correct headings, it'll display it in bullets, it'll add the links correctly. And so kind of using this type of data type, you can implement something like a traditional kind of like CMS blog editor, or you could even, if you wanted to kind of hook this up to your marketing site to where it just kind of pulls in text from Sanity, you could have people on your marketing team editing the content in Sanity, and then when I hit publish, it'll update that, and then whenever they refresh the page in Remix, it'll pull the latest content and display that on the page. And so there's a lot of really cool things you can do. There's also, last thing I want to mention is you can have references. So that's kind of how you handle one-to-one, one-to-many relationships in Sanity. You can basically reference another document type. So since I have this home type, maybe I wanted to model users in Sanity, I could say like realtor, and then I could create a reference to a user. And so this is how you would handle one-to-one relationships, one-to-many relationships. And yeah, it's super, super flexible. I only scratched the surface. There's a lot of really, really cool things Sanity does well. They have amazing webhooks. They have a really amazing live preview feature where you can kind of hook it up to your site to where content creators can see changes live before they hit publish. So they kind of know what it's going to look like. There's a lot of really cool things you can do with Sanity. And I hope this kind of motivates you to kind of check it out next time you have a project and you're trying to consider what data source to use. So yeah, I'll go ahead and end it there. When I finish, I'll kind of wrap this up and kind of upload. I guess I'll send Brooks the GitHub repo and I'll have the finished project so you can see all the different pages and then kind of see in the code how I query everything from Sanity.
Sweet. Thanks, Patrick. I'm gonna switch this view really fast so you can now see all of us. Beautiful. I'll make sure we're not actually seeing us.
I do have a question. Why do you think they went with yet another query language instead of adopting something like GraphQL?
That's a good question. So I haven't used GraphQL to know everything it's capable of, but in Grok, I'm not sure if you can do this in GraphQL, but in Grok, you can kind of have like queries within queries. So you could say, like, let's say I have a home. So this is actually in like the final version that I built that you'll see in the GitHub repo, but there's a page where it has all the details of the house and then it says related homes. So the home schema doesn't actually have a field called related homes, but when you're querying it, I'm basically saying, hey, give me all the fields that this document has and also create a related homes key. And then that's going to resolve to a subquery that I have where I'm going to query all of the homes that are in the same city at a similar price range or at a similar square feet or similar number of bedrooms. So you can do a lot of really cool things where you have queries within queries. You have like utility functions. So like there's one called references, and you can use it to see, you can query documents that are referenced by other documents. So if you have a user, like in Zillow, you can kind of save homes, like you save it and it'll be added to your favorites. If you wanted to implement something like that in Sanity, you could create a user. You kind of have like a one-to-many relationship where you kind of store which homes they've saved or they've favorited. And then when you query in Grok, you could use that references function to say, hey, query all the homes that are referenced in this user's favorite homes field, if that makes sense. And so there's a lot of like really cool things you can do. And there's like conditional utility functions that you can run conditional logic inside of your queries. So if I had to guess, I would say that's why, because they wanted to add a lot of that extra functionality into it, but I'm not 100% sure.
Maybe it's tied more closely to how they actually store the data versus how GraphQL allows you to kind of just resolve to any, any data source. Yeah, it'd be interesting to look into the differentiators.
Yeah, definitely.
That was kind of stemming from your question, like on the storage of data. Where does the data actually get stored? Because it seemed like you're running the studio locally. Is that just spitting out like a JSON file on disk, or does that actually publish to like Sanity's database somewhere?
Yeah, it's actually published to Sanity's database somewhere. The studio just kind of lets you query it and kind of lets you see what's in the database and modify it. But it's actually, the actual data lives, in Sanity's databases somewhere. That studio, you can deploy it and you can either host it. Sanity has like a free hosting service. So you could like just deploy the studio and get a URL like remix.sanity.studio and then give your content creators that URL, and then that'll just kind of let them, it's just kind of like a nice way of seeing what's in the database, but it actually lives inside of a database in Sanity somewhere.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to know if they have an offline mode or if I have to pay for Wi-Fi on the airplane to Devon when I'm flying. Yeah,
What are
thank
you
you.
building this for? Just, did you all for the demo or?
No, it's for his realty.
That's, oh, so you're actually, yeah, I mean, like, that's a pretty cool site.
Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah, I got really ambitious. I'll have to upload the GitHub repo, and then I set it up to be hosted on Netlify. So I'll include a link. I'll send out a link to like the finished thing on Netlify, so you guys can check it out.
It's
And
like you're
yeah,
a page away from selling it to somebody.
Yeah, dude. No, that's awesome. I think that's, if you haven't already shared on like the Remix Discord,
Yeah, it looks
I
good.
think that would be super cool too. I'm sure they'd love, another demo site like this. This is always really helpful when people are getting started, just to see a full-fledged site like you have. So great work.